You are the biggest failure in this family." My sister said those words in the middle of a crowded ballroom, loud enough for everyone to hear. 60 people in designer suits and silk dresses stopped mid-conversation. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light on faces that suddenly found their champagne very interesting. Victoria stood there in her red dress like a warning sign, her perfectly manicured hand still holding a glass of champagne, and she looked at me like I was something stuck to the bottom of her expensive shoes. Nobody gasped. Nobody rushed to defend me. My parents stood 12 feet away, and I watched my mother take a slow sip of her wine while my father examined the pattern on the carpet. The silence was worse than the words, because silence meant agreement. Silence meant she was right. What none of them knew, what my sister certainly did not know, was that in exactly 14 hours, she would be staring at me across a conference table, her face frozen in disbelief, completely silent for the first time in her life. But that moment was still a night away. Right now, I was just the dropout sister who had ruined Victoria's perfect graduation party by existing. Let me go back 45 minutes to when I still had hope that this night might be different. The Palmer House Hilton gleamed like a jewel in downtown Chicago. I had driven past this building 100 times, always on my way somewhere else, never imagining I would walk through those doors as a guest. The grand ballroom had been decorated to celebrate my sister's law school graduation, and a massive banner hung across the entrance reading, "Congratulations, Victoria Caldwell, JD" in gold script. Everything about the room screamed success. Marble floors, antique chandeliers, waiters carrying trays of appetizers that probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget. I hesitated at the entrance, smoothing down my navy dress. It was the nicest thing I owned, bought secondhand for a job interview 3 years ago. Clean, presentable, appropriate. But standing in this room full of designer labels and silk ties, I understood immediately that I did not belong. My mother spotted me from across the room. She waved once, a quick flutter of her fingers, then gestured toward a table in the far corner, the one furthest from the main celebration. I walked toward it, weaving through clusters of Victoria's law school friends and colleagues from Hartwell and Associates, the prestigious firm that had just hired her. Nobody greeted me. Nobody even noticed me. I was invisible, the way I had always been invisible in this family. I found my assigned seat and sat down alone, wondering why I had come at all, because some part of me still hoped. That was the embarrassing truth. After 28 years of being overlooked, compared, and dismissed, some stubborn part of my heart still believed that maybe this time would be different. Maybe my mother would ask how I was doing, maybe my father would look at me with something other than vague disappointment. Maybe Victoria would introduce me to her friends like a normal sister would. I was still that 7-year-old girl sitting at the kitchen table waiting for someone to notice my report card. Victoria held court at the center of the room, surrounded by admirers. She laughed at someone's joke, throwing her head back in that practiced way she had perfected in high school. Our father stood beside her, his hand on her shoulder, beaming with a pride I had never once seen directed at me. She caught my eye across the room and smiled. For one second I thought maybe I had been wrong about her. Then she waved me over and I realized my mistake too late. "This is my little sister Meredith," Victoria announced to the group of lawyers surrounding her. "She is between things right now." Someone in a gray suit asked what field I was in, and before I could answer, Victoria cut in smoothly. "She dropped out of college a few years back. Still figuring it out, right, Mary?" The lawyers nodded politely, already losing interest. I stood there with my cheap dress and my invisible life, feeling the familiar weight of being reduced to a footnote in my sister's story. My mother found me near the dessert table 20 minutes later. She pulled me aside with that expression she always wore when I had disappointed her, which was most of the time. "Could you not have worn something nicer?" she whispered. "Victoria's colleagues are here. Important people." I told her this was nice. She looked at my dress the way you might look at a stain on white carpet. "It is adequate," she said, "like everything else you do." Then she launched into a recitation of Victoria's achievements. Law review, top of her class. Recruited by the best firm in Chicago. She spoke about my sister like she was describing a miracle. When she mentioned that Nana Rose would be so proud, something twisted in my chest. Nana Rose was the only person who had ever believed in me, and she had been gone for 2 years now. I opened my mouth to say something, anything, but my mother had already spotted someone more important to talk to. I was making my way toward the exit when Victoria intercepted me. Her smile was gone. In its place was the cold irritation she reserved for problems that needed to be solved. "You need to leave," she said quietly. I asked her why. She gestured at my dress, my face, my existence. "You are making me look bad in front of my lawyer friends. Look at you. You do not belong here." I told her I was her sister. She laughed, but there was no warmth in it. "You are an embarrassment," she said. "A college dropout who does what exactly? Plays on computers?" I did not answer. What could I say? That the computers she mocked had built something she could not imagine? That the dropout sister had created an empire while she was memorizing case law? I had kept my success secret for 5 years. I was not about to reveal it now, in the middle of her party, just to win an argument. But Victoria was not finished. She stepped closer, her voice rising just enough for the nearby guests to hear. "You are the biggest failure in this family," she announced. "The only reason you are here is because Mom felt guilty. Do everyone a favor and leave." Silence rippled outward. I saw Margaret Hartwell, the senior partner, watching from a nearby table with an expression I could not read. My parents stood frozen, drinks in hand, not moving to defend me. 28 years of evidence confirmed in a single moment. I did not cry, I did not argue, I simply turned and walked toward the exit, each step feeling like a mile. Behind me, Victoria was already laughing with her friends, the moment forgotten. I was almost to the door when I heard Margaret Hartwell say something to her colleague. I could not make out the words, but I saw her glance at Victoria with something that looked almost like disapproval. I made it to the hallway before I stopped, leaning against the wall to catch my breath. My phone buzzed in my purse, a notification from my executive assistant. The Hartwell team confirmed for tomorrow at 10 a.m. Margaret Hartwell leading personally. I stared at the message for a long time. Victoria's huge client meeting, the one she had been bragging about all night, was with my company. Tomorrow morning, she would walk into my conference room expecting to impress some mysterious CEO. She would find me instead. I could have sent my COO. I could have stayed hidden the way I had for 5 years. But something had shifted inside me. Nana Rose's voice echoed in my memory. "Success is the sweetest when they least expect it." I texted my assistant back. "Tomorrow's meeting. I will be there personally." Then I walked to my car and drove home through Chicago's glittering skyline, past the building where my company occupied the top 10 floors, and smiled for the first time all night. Victoria wanted me gone. Fine, I would be gone. But tomorrow, I would be back, and she would not be able to look away. The drive home felt longer than usual. Chicago's streets glistened from an earlier rain, and the city lights reflected off wet pavement like scattered diamonds. I gripped the steering wheel of my Tesla and tried to focus on the road instead of Victoria's words echoing in my skull. The biggest failure in this family. I had heard variations of that sentence my entire life, but somehow it still cut. I passed the Palmer house in my rearview mirror, watching it shrink into the distance. Then I passed my own building, Nexus Tower, 40 floors of glass and steel rising into the night sky. The top 10 floors belonged to my company, my empire, built in silence while my family dismissed me as a dropout who played on computers. I did not stop. I kept driving toward my penthouse in River North, needing the distance between who I was and who they thought I was. I had built something that would make their heads spin, and yet one sentence from Victoria could still make me feel like I was 12 years old, standing in the doorway of our parents' house, waiting for someone to notice I existed. That was the cruelest part. Not the insult itself, but the power it still held over me. 28 years of being invisible, and I still wanted them to see me. I still hoped they might finally look in my direction and recognize something worth acknowledging. The hope was the wound that never healed. My penthouse overlooked the Chicago skyline. Floor-to-ceiling windows, minimalist furniture, everything clean and modern and expensive. It was the home of a successful woman, not a failure. But standing in the darkness with the city spread out below me, I did not feel successful. I felt hollow. I kicked off my heels and dropped my keys on the marble counter, poured myself a glass of wine, walked to the window and stared at the buildings I was quietly conquering, one deal at a time. On the bookshelf behind me, a single personal item broke the minimalist aesthetic. A framed photograph of Nana Rose, slightly worn, in a silver frame. I picked it up and studied her face. She had been gone for 2 years now, but sometimes I could still hear her voice clearly, like she was standing right beside me. "You said they would see eventually, Nana," I whispered to her photograph. "You said success was the best response. But what if they never see? What if I am always just the ghost?" Next to the photograph sat a sealed envelope, yellowed with age. Nana had given it to me before she died, with strict instructions written on the front in her shaky handwriting. For Meredith. Open when you no longer need their approval. I touched it gently, feeling the weight of whatever was inside. I had carried this envelope for 2 years, never opening it, because I still needed their approval. That was the shameful truth I could not escape. My phone buzzed with an email notification. M. Hartwell and Associates. The subject line read, "Tomorrow's meeting, personal request." I stared at it without opening it. Tomorrow would change everything. But tonight I was trapped in the past. I sank onto my couch, wine glass in hand, and let the memories surface. 6 years ago, I had been a different person, hopeful, naive, certain that if I just achieved enough, my parents would finally pay attention. I remembered the day I received my acceptance letter from Northwestern. Full academic scholarship, 4 years of tuition covered. I had run into the kitchen waving the letter like a trophy, expecting celebration. My parents were at the breakfast table with Victoria, who was sorting through her own pile of college mail. "I got in," I had announced breathlessly. "Full scholarship. They are covering everything." My mother barely looked up. "That is nice, dear," she said. Then she turned to my father. "Thomas, Victoria has something to tell us." Victoria smirked and held up her own letter. "Georgetown Law," she announced. "Top 5 program in the country." My mother's face transformed into pure joy. "Oh, Victoria, that is wonderful. Thomas, we need to celebrate." My father beamed with pride. "That is my girl." I stood there with my full scholarship, my free education, my ticket to a future, and nobody asked a single question about it. But Victoria's acceptance, which would cost our parents hundreds of thousands of dollars, merited a dinner at Gibson's Steakhouse. That was the moment I understood the rules. It was never about achievement. It was never about potential. It was about who mattered. Victoria mattered. I did not. The memory shifted, carrying me deeper into the past. 1 month before Nana Rose died, I sat in her small apartment surrounded by books and plants and the smell of lavender. I had just dropped out of Northwestern after 1 semester, and my parents had cut me off completely. Disgrace, my mother had called me. Embarrassment. Victoria had texted me with a single cruel sentence. "Thanks for making us look bad." Again. But Nana did not judge. She made tea, sat beside me, and listened while I explained everything. I had found something, I told her. A real opportunity, an app I had built. Investors were interested. But it meant leaving school, working 18-hour days, taking a risk that made no sense on paper. "My parents think I am throwing away my future," I said. "They think I am a failure." Nana studied me with those sharp eyes that saw everything. "Do you think you are a failure?" she asked. I hesitated. "No," I admitted. I think this could be something real. Then let them think what they want, Nana said firmly. You have something they cannot see yet, Meredith. You have always had it. She reached into her drawer and pulled out an envelope. Inside was $50,000. My savings, she explained. Your grandfather left this for me to give to whoever needed it most. That is you. I tried to refuse, but she pressed the envelope into my hands. Build your something, she said. Prove them wrong. And when you do, when you are standing at the top, remember this. Success is the sweetest when they least expect it. 3 weeks later, she was gone. I never got to show her what I built with her gift. I never got to tell her that she was the only person in my family who ever believed I would become anything. But I kept her words close, repeating them like a prayer during the hardest nights. Success is the sweetest when they least expect it. The memory of my parents' rejection still burned the sharpest. 1 week after I dropped out, they summoned me to the family home. I stood in the formal living room while they sat like a tribunal, their faces hard with disappointment. You left Northwestern, my father said flatly. A full scholarship. For what? Some internet nonsense? I tried to explain. It is not nonsense. It is a fintech platform. I have investors who believe in what I am building. My mother cut me off. Investors in what? You do not even have a degree. Victoria appeared in the doorway, smirking. I told you she would quit. She always quits. My mother nodded in agreement. Victoria worked hard for her success. She did not take shortcuts. I wanted to scream that I was working harder than Victoria had ever worked in her life, that I was building something from nothing while she was memorizing case law, but I knew they would not hear me. They had never heard me. We are done supporting this fantasy, my father announced. You are on your own. My mother added the final blow. Do not tell anyone about this. It is embarrassing enough that Victoria has to explain why her sister is whatever you are now. I deleted the voicemail my mother had left after the graduation party. Then I deleted the text from Victoria. Then I sat alone in my penthouse, surrounded by the evidence of everything I had built, and waited for midnight. My phone rang just before 12. Daniel Chen, my mentor and co-founder, checking in like he always did when he sensed something was wrong. I heard about the party, he said gently. Your assistant mentioned it was rough. I told him what happened. Victoria's public humiliation, my parents' silence, the way Margaret Hartwell had watched everything unfold. Daniel was quiet for a moment. The same Margaret Hartwell coming to the meeting tomorrow, he asked. The very same, I confirmed, and Victoria will be there too, as a junior associate on the team trying to sign my company as their client. Daniel exhaled slowly. You could still send Marcus to the meeting. Stay anonymous. They would never know. I could, I agreed, but I will not. Nana Rose told me success is sweetest when they least expect it. I think tomorrow qualifies. For the first time all night, I felt something other than pain. I felt ready. I woke before dawn, but sleep had barely touched me anyway. Victoria's words had played on repeat all night, mixing with memories and fury until I gave up trying to rest. Now sunlight streamed through my penthouse windows, and I had a choice to make. I could send my COO to the Hartwell meeting, stay hidden, remain the invisible dropout sister. Or I could walk into that conference room myself and watch my sister's world collapse around her. I chose the second option before my feet even touched the floor. My morning routine felt different today. Every action carried weight. I meditated for 10 minutes, trying to quiet the noise in my head, made coffee and scrolled through overnight market reports on my phone. Checked emails from international partners who had no idea their CEO was the black sheep of the Caldwell family. This was who I was every day, disciplined, focused, invisible by choice. But today, the invisibility would end. I stood in my walk-in closet and studied the rows of designer suits I never wore around my family. For 5 years, I had dressed down for holidays and birthday dinners, drove rental cars instead of my Tesla, kept my address private so they would never see this penthouse. I let them see what they expected to see. The dropout, the disappointment, the ghost. Today, I would show them the woman I had become when they were not watching. I selected a charcoal Armani suit, a silk blouse the color of cream, and Louboutin heels that added 3 inches to my height. The armor of success. On my vanity, a small velvet box held Nana Rose's antique pearl earrings, the only thing I had publicly inherited from her. I put them on and looked at my reflection. This woman did not look like anyone's failure. The drive to downtown Chicago felt like a march toward battle. I passed Millennium Park, past the bean catching morning light, past the familiar landmarks of a city I had quietly conquered. Then Nexus Tower came into view, and my heart swelled with something I rarely let myself feel. Pride. 40 stories of glass and steel, modern architecture that dominated the financial district skyline. The logo was subtle, but unmistakable. Nexus Financial, spelled out in brushed steel letters above the entrance. My company occupied floors 30 through 40. The executive suite sat at the very top, with views that stretched to the horizon in every direction. I pulled into the underground parking garage and stopped in my reserved spot. A small sign read, M. Caldwell, CEO. I sat there for a moment, hands on the steering wheel, letting the reality sink in. 9-figure valuation. 240 employees. Partnerships with 3 of the largest banks in the country. And at the top of it all, the college dropout, the family disgrace, the biggest failure in the Caldwell family. Me. I took the private elevator up, watching floor numbers climb. Each floor represented years of 18-hour days, sleepless nights, problems that seemed impossible until I solved them, rejections that stung until I proved them wrong. The elevator opened onto the 40th floor, and I stepped into the space I had built from nothing. My corner office overlooked all of Chicago. Floor-to-ceiling windows, minimalist desk with multiple monitors, fresh flowers delivered every morning because I could afford small luxuries now. One personal item sat on the bookshelf, a framed photograph of Nana Rose, identical to the one in my penthouse. I touched it gently, drawing strength from her memory. In the desk drawer, I kept her handwritten letter. Not the sealed one, but the first one she had written me years ago. I had read it 100 times during the hardest moments of building this company. You have something they cannot see yet, Meredith. You have always had it. She had given me $50,000 to start. Seed money for a dream that everyone else called foolish. I remembered my first office, a corner booth in a coffee shop where I coded for 20 hours straight. Remembered the first investor meeting where I was rejected before I finished my pitch. The 15th meeting where someone finally said yes. Year 1 brought 5 employees and our first major client. Year 2 brought Series A funding and a real office. Year 3 brought Daniel Chen, a successful tech entrepreneur who saw something in me worth betting on. He joined as co-founder and brought the expertise and connections I desperately needed. Year 4 brought Series B funding and explosive growth. Year 5 brought the 9-figure valuation and acquisition offers I turned down because I was not finished building. Through all of it, my family never knew. I kept my name out of the press. Declined interviews. Let my COO be the public face while I worked behind the scenes. Not because I was ashamed, because I wanted to prove myself without the Caldwell name, without their doubt poisoning everything I touched. I wanted to succeed in silence, so when I finally spoke, there would be nothing left to question. A knock on my office door pulled me back to the present. Daniel walked in carrying 2 cups of coffee, dressed casually in jeans and a blazer. His silver-streaked hair and calm presence always steadied me. He was the only person who knew the full story of my family, the dismissals, the favoritism, the way Victoria had spent our entire lives tearing me down. He set a coffee cup on my desk and studied my face. "You look ready for war," he said. I asked if it was that obvious. He smiled. The Armani was a giveaway. How bad was last night? I told him everything. Victoria's public humiliation, the silence of my parents, the way Margaret Hartwell had watched it all unfold with an unreadable expression. Daniel's face darkened as he listened. "She said that?" he asked. "Publicly?" "Loudly," I confirmed, proudly. "Then she told me to leave because I was making her look bad." Daniel set down his coffee with more force than necessary. "And Margaret Hartwell heard this?" "Front row seat," I said. Daniel slid a folder across my desk. "The Hartwell and Associates pitch package." I opened it and found myself staring at page 3, where the dedicated team for the Nexus account smiled confidently in professional headshots. Victoria Caldwell, Junior Associate. There she was, looking polished and perfect, completely unaware that she was pitching her own sister's company. I closed the folder and looked at Daniel. "The irony is not lost on me," I said. He nodded slowly. "She has been telling everyone she is the lead on this account. Landing Nexus would put her on partnership track. Her entire career trajectory depends on signing this client. And the client is me," I said. "The biggest failure in the family." Daniel's expression was serious. "You could still send Marcus to the meeting. Stay anonymous. They would never know. I knew he was right. I could stay hidden. Let my family continue believing I was nothing." But something had shifted inside me. I was tired of being the ghost. Tired of letting them erase me from every room I entered. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "Victoria is glowing this morning. Big meeting today. Could make her career. So proud of her. When will you do something with your life?" I showed Daniel the message. He read it, exhaled slowly, and looked at me with understanding. "Forget what I said about staying anonymous," he said quietly. "Make them choke on their assumptions." I put away my phone and straightened my jacket. In 90 minutes, that elevator would open. Victoria would walk into my conference room expecting to impress some mysterious CEO. She would see my name on the door, my company on the walls, my empire spread out before her. And she would understand that every cruel word, every dismissal, every time she called me a failure, she was wrong. The intercom on my desk crackled with my assistant's voice. "Ms. Caldwell, security just called. The Hartwell team has arrived in the lobby. They are on their way up." I touched Nana's pearls, feeling their warmth against my skin. Smoothed my Armani jacket. Took one last look at the city I had conquered in silence. "Send them in when they are ready," I said. And I waited for my sister to walk into a reality she never imagined. 13 minutes until Victoria arrived. I sat alone at the head of the executive conference room table, staring out at Chicago spread below me like a map of everything I had conquered in secret. The clock on the wall ticked steadily toward 10 a.m. My coffee had gone cold, but I could not bring myself to drink it anyway. Nerves hummed beneath my skin despite my outward calm. Nana's pearls felt warm against my throat, a reminder that I was not truly alone. Somewhere in the lobby 40 floors below, my sister was probably rehearsing her pitch, checking her reflection, dreaming of the partnership track this deal would put her on. She had no idea what waited for her at the top of this building. In 13 minutes, 2 versions of my life would collide. The daughter they dismissed and the CEO they needed. The ghost and the woman who owned everything they could see from this window. I had spent 5 years keeping these worlds separate. Now I was about to watch them crash into each other. My phone lit up on the conference table. "Dad." I stared at the screen, watching it ring. Once, twice, 3 times. He had not called me in months. Victoria must have mentioned the big meeting, must have filled him with pride about the career-defining opportunity ahead of her. I let the call go to voicemail. A minute later, the notification appeared. I should have deleted it without listening. I should have protected myself from whatever dismissal he had recorded. But some wounded part of me still wanted to hear my father's voice, still hoped against all evidence that he might say something kind. I pressed play and held the phone to my ear. "Meredith, it is your father." His voice was clipped, efficient, the tone he used for obligations rather than conversations. "Your mother mentioned you left Victoria's party early last night. That was disappointing. Victoria worked hard for that celebration. The least you could do was stay and support her. Anyway, she has an important meeting today. Career-defining, apparently. Try to be happy for her success, even if. He paused, and I could hear him searching for words he did not want to say. Well, just try. Call your mother back. She worries. The message ended. I sat there in the silence, letting his words sink into old wounds. Even when he called me, he was not really calling for me. Every sentence circled back to Victoria. Her party, her career, her success. I was just the disappointing footnote, the obligation he checked off his list before moving on to things that mattered. The voicemail carried me back to a memory I had tried to bury. 2 years ago, Christmas Eve. I had driven to my parents' house with gifts in my trunk and hope in my chest. I had just closed my Series B funding round. Nexus Financial was valued at 9 figures. I had decided to finally tell my family the truth about what I had built. The house smelled like pine and roast beef when I walked in. Decorations sparkled on every surface. For one moment, standing in the doorway with snow melting on my coat, I had felt like I was coming home. I gathered everyone in the living room. I have something to tell you, I announced. Something I have been waiting to share. My mother barely looked up from arranging appetizers. Can it wait? She asked. Victoria is about to tell us about her promotion. I tried again. This is important, Mom. I started a company and we just closed a major funding round. Victoria appeared in the doorway before I could finish. What is important? She asked. Did you finally get a real job? My father chuckled at the joke. Victoria, be nice, I pushed forward, determined. Actually, I built a fintech platform. We have major investors and our valuation just hit. Victoria cut me off with theatrical concern. Oh my God, are you pregnant? Please tell me you are not pregnant. That would be so embarrassing. My mother's face tightened. Victoria, stop. Though Meredith, you are not, are you? I told them no. I was trying to share news about my company, but Victoria was already steering the conversation away. Your little computer thing, she said dismissively. Mom, can I tell everyone about the Henderson case now? And just like that, my moment disappeared. Victoria's promotion dominated the rest of the evening. Every time I tried to speak, someone interrupted or changed the subject. By dessert, I had not finished a single sentence about myself. I cornered my mother in the kitchen while she was loading the dishwasher. I am trying to tell you something important about my life, I said quietly. She sighed without looking at me. Meredith, please. It is Christmas. Do not make everything about you. Victoria has real news to share. Real news. I repeated the words back to her. And I do not? She finally turned to face me, and her expression held no warmth. Sweetheart, we love you. But let us be realistic about expectations. I left early that night without saying goodbye. I never tried to tell them again. Because I realized they did not want to know. It was easier for them to believe I was a failure than to accept they might have been wrong about me. I deleted my father's voicemail and opened my desk drawer. Inside lay Nana Rose's letter, the one I had read dozens of times when I needed strength. Her handwriting was shaky but clear, written 3 weeks before she died. My dearest Meredith, she had written. If you are reading this, you are probably having a hard day. Maybe your mother said something cruel or Victoria made you feel small. I know how they are. I know what they have taken from you. But I also know what they cannot see. You have something in you, child. A fire, a stubbornness, a refusal to be what they expect. Your grandfather had it too. He built something from nothing while everyone told him he would fail. He succeeded not because of his family, but despite them. You will do the same. You already are. When the world finally sees what I have always seen, remember this. Success is the sweetest when they least expect it. Not because revenge is noble, but because truth has a weight that lies cannot carry. Let them see. Let them know. You have earned that moment. All my love, always. Nana Rose. I traced her signature with my finger and felt the sting of tears I refused to let fall. She was the only person who had ever truly seen me. Gone 2 years now, but her belief remained. My eyes drifted to the other item in the drawer, the sealed envelope with her final instruction. Open when you no longer need their approval. I touched it gently, wondering if today would be that day. Not yet. Soon, maybe, but not yet. I closed the drawer as a knock came at the door. Daniel entered, checking his watch. 5 minutes, he said. The Hartwell team just cleared security. I stood and straightened my jacket. Ready does not quite cover what I am feeling. He smiled slightly. Last chance. What do you want out of this meeting? I considered his question carefully. I do not know. Recognition? Vindication? Maybe just to stop hiding. And if Victoria's career suffers because of what comes out today? Daniel asked. She was not worried about my career when she called me a failure, I said. Why should I protect hers now? He nodded. Fair enough. I just want you to own whatever choice you make in there. I looked him in the eye. I own it. The intercom crackled with my assistant's voice. Ms. Caldwell, the Hartwell team has arrived. Ms. Hartwell is asking for you personally. This was it. I walked to the conference room and took my seat at the head of the table, back to the door, facing the windows. Daniel settled into the chair to my right. We exchanged a look of solidarity. I heard footsteps approaching down the hallway. Margaret Hartwell's polished voice floated through the door. Impressive space. Very impressive. Then Victoria's voice, bright with eager ambition. Nexus Financial is one of the most innovative firms in fintech. This partnership would be transformative for both organizations. I cannot wait to meet the CEO. The door handle turned. I heard James welcoming them, offering coffee, directing them toward the table. Victoria kept talking, nervous energy spilling into professional chatter. I wonder what they are like. The CEO, I mean, building something this significant while staying completely private. There must be an interesting story there. James cleared his throat with perfect formality. Everyone, may I present Meredith Caldwell, CEO and co-founder of Nexus Financial. I turned my chair slowly and looked directly at my sister. Her face went white. Her mouth fell open. The folder she was holding slipped from her fingers and scattered across the floor. And for the first time in 28 years, Victoria Caldwell had absolutely nothing to say. The silence lasted 5 seconds, maybe 6. But those seconds stretched into something endless, a frozen moment where time itself seemed to hold its breath. Victoria stood in the doorway of my conference room with her face drained of all color. Her mouth hung open slightly, forming words that never came. The folder she had dropped lay scattered at her feet, pages of carefully prepared research fanning across the marble floor. Behind her, Margaret Hartwell and 2 senior associates waited with polite confusion, not yet understanding why their junior colleague had turned to stone. I watched my sister's eyes cycle through recognition, confusion, denial, and finally a desperate, scrambling horror. She looked at me the way you would look at a ghost who suddenly turned solid. Except I was not the ghost anymore. I was the most real thing in the room. Margaret Hartwell noticed the freeze immediately. Her sharp eyes moved between me and Victoria, calculating, assessing, filing away information for later use. I saw the micro-expression that crossed her face, a slight narrowing of her gaze, a subtle tightening around her mouth. She was already connecting dots. The graduation party, the failure sister, the CEO sitting before her now. But her professional mask stayed perfectly in place. She was a woman who had spent 40 years in high-stakes negotiations. A little family drama would not rattle her composure. I spoke first because I controlled this room. Ms. Hartwell, I said calmly, thank you for coming. Please, have a seat. My voice was steady, professional, revealing nothing of the storm inside me. Margaret recovered with impressive grace, stepping forward to shake my hand while Victoria remained frozen behind her. Ms. Caldwell, she said smoothly, the pleasure is mine. Your company's reputation precedes you. The senior associates filed in and took their seats. One of them gently touched Victoria's elbow, trying to snap her out of her trance. She flinched like she had been burned, then forced herself forward on unsteady legs. Her heels clicked unevenly against the floor as she made her way to the far end of the conference table. She chose the seat furthest from me, as if distance could protect her from the truth that had just exploded in her face. Her hands trembled visibly as she opened her notebook to a page of carefully prepared talking points. I could read the header from where I sat. Nexus CEO. Key talking points. Self-made success story. Innovative vision. Impressive growth. The irony was almost too perfect. Margaret launched into her pitch with practiced precision. Hartwell and Associates credentials, their client list, their expertise in fintech regulatory compliance. She was polished and impressive, clearly the reason her firm had reached the top of Chicago's legal world. I listened attentively, asked intelligent questions, treated this like any other business meeting. Because that was my power now. I could sit across from the sister who had humiliated me and act like none of it mattered. Victoria tried to contribute. She managed a few words about regulatory frameworks, her voice barely above a whisper. But every sentence she spoke sounded hollow, stripped of the confidence she usually wore like armor. Margaret glanced at her expectantly during a pause in the discussion. Victoria fumbled with her papers, unable to find the right page. "We have prepared extensive research on your company's needs," she finally managed. Her hands shook so badly that the pages rattled. 20 minutes into the meeting, Margaret stopped mid-sentence. Her eyes moved deliberately from me to Victoria and back again. The question hung in the air before she even spoke it. "Forgive me, Ms. Caldwell," she said carefully, "but I could not help noticing." "Do you two know each other?" The room went absolutely still. Victoria stopped breathing. I felt Daniel shift slightly beside me, ready to intervene if needed. But I did not need saving, not anymore. "She is my sister," I said calmly. The words landed like stones dropped into deep water. Ripples of shock spread across every face at the table. Margaret's professional mask finally slipped, revealing genuine surprise beneath. "Your sister," she repeated. "Yes," I confirmed. Victoria sat motionless at the end of the table, staring at her notebook like it might offer escape. Margaret turned to her with an expression I could not quite read. "You did not mention that your sister was the CEO of our most important prospective client." Victoria's voice came out strangled. "I did not know." Margaret's eyebrows rose. "You did not know your own sister was the CEO of a 9-figure company?" "It is complicated," Victoria whispered. Margaret held her gaze for a long moment. "I see," she said. Those 2 words carried enormous weight. Daniel smoothly redirected the conversation, suggesting we continue with the partnership proposal. He asked about Hartwell's international capabilities, their experience with cross-border transactions, anything to give everyone an exit from the suffocating awkwardness. Margaret accepted the lifeline and continued her presentation, but something had fundamentally shifted. Her tone toward Victoria had cooled. Her questions now seemed designed to test rather than include. I noticed her make a small note in her leather portfolio. From my angle, I could see one word underlined twice. Victoria. Something was being recorded. Something would be addressed later. Victoria attempted to recover as the meeting continued. She cited statistics she had memorized, referenced case studies she had prepared, but every word sounded desperate now, stripped of the authority she usually projected. Margaret asked her directly about her assessment of Nexus's leadership. "Strong," Victoria managed. "Visionary." "The CEO has built something remarkable." Margaret's response was ice cold. High praise from someone who did not know who the CEO was until 40 minutes ago. Victoria had no answer. I watched her shrink smaller with each passing minute. The woman who had stood in a ballroom last night declaring me the biggest failure in the family, reduced to monosyllables and trembling hands. I had not said a word about our relationship beyond confirming it. I had not attacked her or exposed her cruelty. I did not have to. The truth was doing all the work. The meeting wrapped after 45 minutes, shorter than anyone had planned. The tension had become unsustainable. Margaret rose from her chair with professional grace. "Thank you for your time, Ms. Caldwell. This has been illuminating. We will follow up with a formal proposal by end of week. I told her we would review everything carefully." She held my gaze for a moment longer than necessary. "I am sure you will." Then she turned to Victoria with an expression that promised consequences. "Victoria, a word before we leave." They stepped to the side of the room, voices low but intense. I watched Victoria's face go from white to red as Margaret spoke. She nodded repeatedly, shame radiating from every line of her body. I did not try to hear what was said. I did not need to. The Hartwell team filed out. Margaret shook my hand again at the door, firmer this time. "You have built something impressive, Ms. Caldwell. We would be honored to partner with you." The senior associates followed. Victoria was last. She stopped in the doorway and turned back to look at me. 1,000 words lived in that look. Shock, shame, fear, and something I did not expect. A desperate plea. "Mary," she whispered. I cut her off. "Not here. Not now." "Please," she said. "I need to explain. I told her she needed to leave. Her boss was waiting." Her face crumpled like paper crushed in a fist. "I am sorry," she managed. I met her eyes without flinching. "Are you sorry?" I asked. "Or are you just sorry you got caught?" She had no answer. She never did when the truth came calling. Victoria left. The door closed behind her. Daniel and I sat alone in the conference room, surrounded by the wreckage of expectations. He waited until their footsteps faded before speaking. "That was harder than you expected," he said. "It was not a question." "Yes," I admitted. "It was." "Are you okay?" I walked to the window and looked down at the city I had built my empire across. Somewhere in the elevator, Victoria was descending toward an uncertain future. I had wanted to be seen. I had wanted the truth to matter. But I had not expected the truth to feel so heavy. "I do not know," I said honestly. "But I think I am about to find out." My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from my mother. "Victoria just called me hysterical." "What did you do?" "Call me immediately." The family storm was just beginning. I stood at the window of my conference room, staring at the text from my mother. "Victoria just called me hysterical." "What did you do?" "Call me immediately." Of course. Of course, the first response was blame. My sister had spent 28 years tearing me down, had publicly humiliated me less than 24 hours ago, and somehow I was already the villain. Daniel watched me from across the room, reading my expression. He did not need to ask what the message said. "Family," I told him. "The apocalypse is starting." He nodded slowly. "You going to answer?" "Not yet. Maybe not at all." "They are going to keep calling," he warned. "Let them," I said, and I meant it. My phone buzzed again, Dad this time. I watched it ring through to voicemail, then it rang again immediately. Then a text appeared. "Answer your phone." This is serious. The siege had officially begun. I pocketed my phone and told Daniel I needed to leave. I could not process this here, surrounded by the evidence of everything I had built in secret. I needed space and privacy and room to think. Daniel understood. "Go," he said. "I will handle anything that comes up. Call me if you need backup with the family." I drove home through Saturday morning traffic with my phone buzzing every few minutes. I ignored every notification. My mind kept replaying the meeting. Victoria's face draining of color, Margaret's sharp eyes calculating, the scattered papers on the conference room floor. The satisfaction I had expected was not there. Something heavier had taken its place. My penthouse felt different when I walked through the door. The secret was out now. Victoria knew where I worked. Soon she would know where I lived. The walls between my two lives had crumbled completely. I dropped my keys on the counter and finally looked at my phone. 7 missed calls from my mother, 4 from my father, 12 texts growing increasingly urgent and angry, 1 voicemail from Victoria that I was not ready to hear, and buried among the family chaos, A message from an unknown number. Ms. Caldwell, this is Margaret Hartwell. I would like to speak with you privately at your earliest convenience. It concerns a personnel matter. Victoria's fate was already being decided. I knew I could not avoid my parents forever. Better to control the confrontation than let it ambush me later. I poured myself a glass of water, sat on my couch, and called my mother. She answered before the first ring finished. Finally, she snapped, "Do you have any idea what you have done?" "Hello to you too, Mom. Do not take that tone with me." Victoria called in tears. Absolute tears, Meredith. She said you humiliated her in front of her boss, in front of the most important client of her career. I kept my voice steady. I did not humiliate anyone. I sat in my own office and took a meeting. My mother's confusion was audible. Your office? What are you talking about? Nexus Financial, Mom. The company Victoria was trying to sign as a client. I am the CEO. Silence stretched across the line. When she spoke again, her voice had changed. That is not possible. And yet here we are, I said. She could not process what I was telling her. Every sentence circled back to Victoria's distress rather than engaging with the reality I had just revealed. I do not understand, she kept saying. You dropped out of college. You have been struggling. I have been building a company, I told her. A successful one, for 5 years. Why did you not tell us? She demanded. Would you have listened? Would you have cared? Or would you have found a way to make it about Victoria? That is not fair, she protested. I felt something snap inside me. Last night Victoria called me the biggest failure in the family, in front of strangers, in front of Margaret Hartwell. You were there, Mom. Did you defend me? Silence. Did you say a single word? More silence. That was different, she finally managed. She was upset. She did not mean it. She meant every word, I said. And so did you. Every time you asked when I would do something with my life. Every time you compared me to her. Every time you looked through me like I was not even there. In the background, I heard my father's voice. Is that Meredith? Give me the phone. I will handle this. My father took over with his controlled, reasonable tone. The voice he used when he wanted to manage a situation rather than understand it. Meredith, let us discuss this calmly. I have been waiting 30 years for that conversation, Dad. There is no need for dramatics. I laughed bitterly. Dramatics? You mean like calling your daughter the biggest failure in the family at a public event? That kind of dramatics? Victoria was out of line, he admitted. We have spoken to her. You have spoken to her. But have you listened to yourselves? He ignored my question. Your mother says you are claiming to run some company? Not claiming. Running. Nexus Financial, 9-figure valuation. Look it up. I do not understand why you would hide something like this. Because every time I tried to share something with this family, it was dismissed, ignored, made about Victoria. I stopped trying. That is not true, he insisted. We have always supported both of you equally. I could not help the bitter laugh that escaped. Equally. Tell me, Dad, what was my scholarship to Northwestern worth? Do you even remember I had one? He paused too long. That was years ago. You celebrated Victoria's acceptance to Georgetown for a week. My full ride got 15 seconds at breakfast before you changed the subject. You are being dramatic, he said. I am being accurate. There is a difference. He shifted tactics then, trying to make this about family unity and moving forward. Whatever happened in the past, you are clearly doing well now. That is wonderful. We should celebrate as a family. Celebrate, I repeated. You mean take credit. That is unfair. Is it? Where was the celebration when Nana Rose left me the money to start this company? Where was the support when I was working 20-hour days building something from nothing? We did not know, he protested. You did not ask. Not once in 5 years did you ask what I was actually doing with my life. You just assumed I was failing. We are your parents, he said, as if that explained everything. We want to be part of your success. You wanted me to be invisible. You got your wish. Now you do not get to walk back in because the invisible girl turned out to be someone worth knowing." His control finally slipped. "Now listen here, Meredith. This attitude of yours is exactly why. Exactly why what, Dad? Exactly why you wrote me off? Exactly why Victoria felt comfortable calling me a failure to my face? Victoria is upset. Her career might be damaged because of this. Her career might be damaged because she lied to her boss and humiliated her own sister in public. That is not my fault. That is consequence. You need to fix this," he demanded. "No," I said, "I do not." And I hung up. My hands were shaking. Not from fear, from adrenaline. I had never hung up on my parents before. Never cut them off mid-sentence. Never refused to smooth things over for Victoria's benefit. It felt terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. I finally played Victoria's voicemail. 12 minutes of tears and apologies and desperate explanations. She talked about sitting in her car because she could not face going back upstairs. About Margaret suggesting she take the rest of the day. About suddenly understanding, for the first time, what it felt like to be looked at like you were nothing. "I am not asking you to forgive me," she said through her tears. "I just wanted you to know that I see it now. What we did. What I did. I see it." I sat in silence after the message ended. Her apology sounded real. But was it remorse or just fear of consequences? I could not tell. Maybe it did not matter yet. I typed a response to Margaret Hartwell. Professional. Neutral. I agreed to meet and promised an honest conversation. Then I set down my phone and walked to the window. The secret was over. The storm had broken. And somehow, standing in the wreckage, I felt more like myself than I had in 30 years. Monday morning arrived with pale sunlight streaming through my office windows. I sat at my desk, coffee untouched, waiting for Margaret Hartwell. The weekend had felt like a year. I had ignored 17 more calls from my family. Victoria sent 5 texts that I left unanswered. My parents left voicemails that ranged from pleading to threatening. I deleted them all without listening. Now it was 9:15, and the woman who held my sister's career in her hands was due in 15 minutes. James had already confirmed the appointment. Private meeting, no associates. No Daniel. Just 2 women who had built something from nothing, sitting down to discuss the wreckage of a family that had failed one of its daughters. I glanced at the morning briefing James had left on my desk. A news alert caught my eye. Hartwell and Associates announces internal review of associate conduct policies. No names mentioned. But I knew. Something was already happening. Something that would determine Victoria's future at the firm she had worked so hard to join. At exactly 9:30, James announced Margaret's arrival. She walked into my office looking nothing like the polished pitchwoman from Saturday. No briefcase, no presentation materials, just a charcoal suit, a pearl necklace, and eyes that held something I had not expected. She looked almost nervous. "Thank you for meeting with me privately," she said as she shook my hand. "I imagine your weekend was eventful." "That is one word for it," I admitted. I offered her coffee. She declined but accepted water. She sat across from my desk in the chair reserved for equals, not supplicants. Whatever she had come to say, she intended to say it face to face. I expected her to launch into business, to discuss the partnership or Victoria's professional failings, or some carefully worded legal positioning. Instead, she surprised me completely. "I am going to be direct with you, Meredith." "May I call you Meredith?" I told her Mary was fine. Then she said something I never anticipated. "I did not come here to discuss the Nexus partnership. That can wait. I came because I owe you an apology." I stared at her. An apology for what? "For Friday night," she said quietly. "For standing in that ballroom and watching what I watched without saying a word." My breath caught in my throat. She was there. She saw everything. And she felt guilty about her own silence. Margaret continued, her voice steady but weighted with something like regret. "I have been a lawyer for 40 years. I have seen depositions that were kinder than what your sister said to you. And I stood there, a stranger at a party, and did nothing. I told her she had no obligation to intervene. She did not know me. Decency does not require acquaintance, she replied. I was silent because it was convenient, because intervening would have been awkward, because I told myself it was not my business. She paused. I am not proud of that. Something shifted in my chest. A lock I did not know existed clicking open. You are the first person to apologize for not defending me, I said slowly. My own parents have not managed that. Margaret met my eyes without flinching. Then your parents and I have something in common. We both failed you that night. She told me what she had witnessed, how she had been standing near Victoria when my sister approached me, how she had heard every word of the confrontation. Biggest failure, making me look bad. The dismissal and the cruelty delivered with casual confidence. She described watching my face as the words landed, watching me walk away with dignity while my sister laughed with her friends. When Victoria introduced you, she said between things, she called you. I remember thinking how dismissive it sounded. Then I watched her tear you apart in front of 50 people. And I thought, that is not just cruelty. That is years of practice. She has done this before. My whole life, I confirmed. She has been doing it my whole life. I suspected as much, Margaret said. For 28 years I had been invisible in my family, dismissed and diminished and overlooked. And here was a stranger, a powerful woman who owed me nothing, seeing the truth I had lived with alone, validating what I had always known but could never prove. The tears I had been holding back threatened to spill over, but I held them in. I had cried enough for my family. I would not cry in front of Margaret Hartwell. She shifted the conversation to Victoria's position at Hartwell. I need to discuss your sister's future at my firm, she said. You deserve to know what is happening. I told her she did not owe me that information. It was her firm, her decision. But she shook her head. I built Hartwell on one principle, integrity. Victoria compromised that principle in multiple ways. She publicly humiliated someone, which shows poor judgment. But she also failed to disclose that her sister was the CEO of our most important prospect. Whether she knew or not, she should have asked. She should have done basic due diligence on the client she claimed to be leading. I told Margaret that Victoria genuinely did not know about my company. No one in my family did. Margaret nodded slowly. So I gathered. But here is the problem. Her behavior at the party and her professional conduct are now intertwined. If I keep her on this account, it is a conflict of interest. If I remove her, I am punishing her for treating her sister badly. She paused. It is complicated. Then she asked me a question that stopped me cold. I want to ask you something, and I want an honest answer. Not what you think I want to hear. Not what protects Victoria or destroys her. Just the truth. I agreed. If you were me, she said carefully, knowing everything you know about Victoria, about your family, about what she did, what would you do? The question hung in the air. Margaret was giving me power over Victoria's fate. I could destroy my sister's career with a single word. Part of me wanted that. The part that remembered every cruel comment, every dismissal, every time Victoria had made me feel worthless. But another part of me remembered Nana Rose's voice. Success is the sweetest when they least expect it. Not when you wield it as a weapon. I told Margaret the truth. Victoria was cruel to me Friday night. She has been cruel to me our entire lives. She never saw me as an equal, never respected me, never once asked about my life with genuine curiosity. Margaret waited. I was not finished. Victoria is also smart. She worked hard for her position. She did not lie about her qualifications. She lied about knowing her sister was the CEO. That is personal failing, not professional incompetence. If you fire her for what she did to me, you are not punishing a bad lawyer. You are punishing a bad sister. Those are different crimes. And honestly, I do not want that power. I do not want to be the reason she loses her career. Margaret studied me for a long moment. Even after everything she has done? especially after everything she has done. If Victoria loses her job, I want it to be because of her own choices. Not my revenge. That is her karma to earn, not mine to deliver. Margaret's expression shifted into something like respect. You could have destroyed her. Most people would have. I am not most people, I said. No, she agreed. You clearly are not. She told me Victoria would be placed on probationary review. 3 months, removed from the Nexus account, professional conduct training. Any further incidents would result in termination. It seemed fair, not vengeful and not lenient. Just fair. Before she left, Margaret paused at my door. Your grandmother, she said. The one who believed in you. She must have been quite a woman. I asked how she knew about Nana Rose. Research, Margaret replied. Nexus Financial's seed funding came from a personal inheritance. Rose Caldwell. The pearls you are wearing. Hers? I touched them, surprised. Yes. She saw something in you that your parents missed. Smart woman. Margaret's voice softened. I suspect she would be very proud of how you handled today. After she left, I sat alone in my office, feeling the weight of the choice I had made. I could have destroyed Victoria. Instead, I let her face her own consequences. Nana would have been proud, and for the first time, I was proud of myself too. The hours after Margaret left felt suspended in time. I sat in my office watching Chicago pulse below, processing everything that had happened. The unexpected apology, the choice I made not to destroy Victoria, the strange lightness that came from refusing to become a weapon. Daniel knocked around noon, carrying news. Hartwell just sent over the revised partnership proposal, he said. They have assigned a completely new team. Victoria's name is not anywhere on it. The professional excommunication had begun. I nodded slowly, feeling something complicated rise in my chest. Not satisfaction, not guilt, something in between. Tuesday brought whispers through Chicago's legal and tech circles. Word travels fast when secrets this big finally surface. A few articles appeared online with headlines like "Fintech Founder Revealed" and "The CEO Who Built an Empire in Silence." My PR team fielded interview requests all day. I declined everyone. I wanted to control my own narrative, not feed the gossip machine that was already churning with speculation about the Caldwell sisters. The story was too personal to become entertainment. On the family front, my parents had gone suspiciously quiet. No calls since Sunday, no texts demanding explanations. I recognized this silence. They were regrouping, strategizing, planning their next approach. The calm before another storm. Daniel heard through his contacts at Hartwell that Victoria had shown up Tuesday morning for her first day of professional conduct training. She sat in a room with junior associates half her age, learning workplace ethics like a chastened intern. The golden child being taught basic decency by people who had never heard of her before last week. I tried not to think about her sitting in that training room. Tried not to imagine the shame on her face, the embarrassment of falling so far so fast. She had earned this. Every cruel word and dismissive glance had led her here, but knowing she earned it did not make imagining it any easier. Wednesday afternoon, my phone rang with an unexpected name. Rachel, my cousin. We had been close as children, best friends who shared secrets and dreams during summer vacations at Nana Rose's house. But we drifted apart when the family took sides, and Rachel chose the path of least resistance. Switzerland, she called herself. Neutral. Safe. I had not heard from her in almost 2 years. Mary, she said when I answered. I know we have not talked in forever, but I had to call. I heard what happened. Everyone has heard. I just wanted to say I am not surprised. Not surprised about what? I asked. That you built something amazing. I always knew you would. Her words caught me off guard. You did? Mary, you were the smartest person in our family. You just were not the loudest. Big difference. Rachel shared what she had observed from the sidelines over the years. How Victoria always needed to be the center of every room. How my mother enabled it because managing one demanding daughter was easier than nurturing two different ones. How my father checked out entirely, letting the women sort themselves into hierarchies he never questioned. I should have said something, Rachel admitted. Years ago, when Victoria would tear you down at family dinners and everyone just let her. I asked why she never did. Cowardice, honestly, she said. It was easier to stay quiet than become a target myself. I am sorry for that. I told her she was the second person this week to apologize for staying silent. Maybe it is time for the silent ones to speak up, she replied. Then Rachel said something that stopped my heart. There is something else you should know. About Nana Rose's will. About what your parents did not tell you. I gripped the phone tighter. What do you mean? She hesitated before continuing. Nana did not just leave you the $50,000. She left a letter to your parents, instructions about you. I could barely breathe. What instructions? Nana asked them to support you, Rachel said quietly, to stop comparing you to Victoria, to see you as an individual with your own path. She told them you had more potential than they could see. I heard my mother talking to my mom right after the funeral. She was angry, said Nana had made everything complicated with her meddling. My voice came out strangled, and they ignored it. They called it meddling from the grave. Your mom said Nana always did favor you for no reason. And then they never mentioned it again. The information hit me like a physical blow. All those years, I thought my parents simply could not see me. That I was invisible by accident, overlooked through negligence. But Nana Rose had handed them a map to who I was. She had begged them to follow it. And they threw it away. They chose not to see me. That was different. That was so much worse. I thanked Rachel and promised to call her back. Then I sat in silence for a long time, absorbing the truth that my wounds were even deeper than I knew. Thursday brought an email from Victoria. Not a text, but something she had clearly taken time to write. I hesitated before opening it, unsure if I was ready for whatever she had to say. But curiosity won. Her words filled my screen. Mary, I have started this email 100 times. Nothing sounds right, nothing sounds adequate. But I need to say these things before we meet, because I am not sure I will have the courage in person. I have spent this week in professional conduct training, sitting in a room being taught about respect and integrity, and how to treat colleagues with dignity. The irony is not lost on me. I have been teaching myself those lessons about you for the past 5 days, and failing every exam. I told myself stories about you, that you were lazy, that you gave up easily, that you were not willing to work hard the way I was. I told those stories because they made me feel better about myself. If you were a failure, then I was a success. Simple math. But the math was wrong. You were not failing. You were building. In silence. Without support. Without anyone believing in you except Nana Rose. Nana Rose. She must have seen something I refused to see. She always did love you differently. I thought it was favoritism. Now I wonder if it was just recognition. I sat in that conference room on Saturday and watched you, calm and professional and powerful. And I thought, who is this person? This is not my sister. My sister is a dropout who could not commit to anything. But that was never true, was it? That was just the story I needed to tell myself. I do not expect forgiveness. I do not deserve it. I just want you to know that I finally see what I did, what we all did. I am ready to talk whenever you are. Victoria. I read the email twice. Something shifted in me. Not forgiveness, but understanding. Victoria was doing the work, at least in words. Whether actions would follow remained to be seen. I forwarded the email to Daniel with one line. What do you think? His response came an hour later. I think she is scared. I think she means it. I think only you can decide if that matters. The choice was still mine. Friday evening found me at my penthouse, looking at Nana Rose's photograph. The sealed envelope sat in its drawer, patient as always. I thought about everything I had learned this week. Victoria's professional humiliation, Rachel's revelation about Nana's ignored instructions, Margaret's unexpected apology. The email that showed Victoria might be capable of growth. What did I want now? Not revenge. That was never really the point. Not even reconciliation. That was asking too much too soon. Something simpler. I wanted to be heard. I wanted to say the things I had swallowed for 28 years. And then I wanted to choose what came next. I picked up my phone and typed a message to Victoria. Tomorrow, 2 p.m. My place. I will send you the address. Her response came within seconds. I will be there. Thank you, Mary, for giving me a chance. I set down my phone as another message arrived. My mother. Victoria told me you are meeting her tomorrow. Please do not ruin this. She has been through enough. Be gracious. Be the bigger person. Do not let your resentment destroy what is left of this family. Be the bigger person. As if I had not been the bigger person my entire life. I deleted the message without responding. Tomorrow was not about being gracious. Tomorrow was not about protecting Victoria or appeasing my mother. Tomorrow was about me. Finally, completely, unapologetically me. Saturday afternoon arrived with pale winter light filtering through my penthouse windows. I had spent the morning cleaning, rearranging furniture, burning nervous energy on tasks that did not matter. 2 chairs now sat positioned by the window, facing each other. Deliberate staging. No couch intimacy. This was not a reunion. It was a reckoning. Nana Rose's pearls hung warm against my throat. I had chosen simple clothes today. Black pants, cream blouse, no armor, just myself. The clock on my wall showed 1:47. 13 minutes until Victoria arrived. I stood at the window watching Chicago sprawl below me and tried to organize 28 years of silence into something I could speak aloud. But the words would not line up neatly. They never did when the wounds ran this deep. I had rehearsed 100 versions of this conversation in my head. None of them felt right. So I decided to let the truth come as it would. Messy and raw and imperfect. I glanced at my desk drawer where Nana's sealed envelope waited. Open when you no longer need their approval. Maybe today would be that day. Maybe not. But I was closer than I had ever been. The doorbell rang at 1:58. Victoria was early. Of course she was. She had never been late to anything important in her life. The chime echoed through my penthouse, and I took one breath before crossing to the door. I opened it to find a woman I barely recognized. Victoria stood in my hallway looking nothing like herself. No designer suit, no power blazer, just a simple dress, minimal makeup, hair down around her shoulders. She seemed smaller somehow, diminished. The confidence that usually radiated from her like heat from a fire had guttered out completely. She held nothing but her purse and visible anxiety. Her eyes moved past me into the penthouse, widening as she took in the space. "This is beautiful," she said quietly. "I did not know you lived like this." "There is a lot you did not know," I replied. "I am beginning to understand that." She stepped inside, and her gaze swept across the floor to ceiling windows. The minimalist furniture, the obvious markers of success she had never imagined I possessed. Then her eyes found the photograph of Nana Rose on the bookshelf and stayed there. Something flickered across her face. Grief, maybe. Or regret. I gestured toward the chairs by the window and she walked toward them slowly, like someone approaching a cliff edge. She sat. I took the opposite chair. Close enough to see every expression. Far enough to maintain boundaries. Neither of us spoke for a long moment. Chicago hummed below us. The weight of everything unsaid pressed down on the room. Victoria broke the silence first. "I do not know where to start," she admitted. "Then let me," I said. "I have been waiting 28 years to say things to you, to our parents, to anyone who would listen. But no one ever did. So I stopped trying." She nodded slowly. "I am listening now." I held her gaze. Are you? Or are you just waiting for this to be over so you can feel absolved? She flinched but did not look away. That is fair. But I am really trying, Mary. I need you to believe that. I leaned back in my chair. I do not need to believe anything. I need to be heard. That is all I have ever needed. Victoria's eyes dropped to Nana's photograph again. She always loved you best, she said quietly. I used to hate you for that. The admission surprised me. Victoria had never acknowledged Nana's favoritism before, had never admitted that it bothered her. The first crack in her armor was showing. I began to speak, and once I started, I could not stop. Do you know what it is like to be invisible in your own family? To sit at dinner tables where no one asks about your day? To win scholarships that get 15 seconds of acknowledgement before the conversation turns back to you? I used to think it was my fault, that I was not interesting enough or successful enough or loud enough, that if I just tried harder, achieved more, became someone worth noticing, maybe they would finally see me. But it did not matter what I did. I could have cured cancer and Mom would have asked if I remembered your birthday. I could have walked on the moon and Dad would have mentioned your latest case, because it was never about achievement. It was about who mattered. And I did not. Victoria's tears were forming, but she blinked them back, trying to hold space without defending herself. I continued. You called me a failure at your graduation party. In front of strangers, in front of your boss. Do you know how many times I have been called a failure? By you, by Mom, by Dad. I stopped counting. But here is what kills me, Victoria. You were not wrong about the word. You were wrong about what it meant. You thought failure meant I could not succeed. It actually meant I was not allowed to. Every time I tried to share something, a win, a hope, a dream, it got shut down, dismissed, redirected to you. So I stopped sharing. I built my empire in secret because that was the only way to build it at all. Then I told her what Rachel had revealed, about Nana's instructions, about the letter she left our parents begging them to support me, to stop comparing me to Victoria, to see me for who I really was, about how they called it meddling from the grave and threw it away. Victoria's face went pale. I did not know, she whispered, about Nana's instructions. I swear I did not know. I asked if it would have mattered. She was quiet for a long moment. I want to say yes, but honestly, probably not. I was so busy being the golden child that I never questioned what that cost you. Then it was her turn. She spoke without defending herself, without making excuses, just confessing. I knew what I was doing, she said. That is the worst part. I knew it and I did it anyway. When I called you a failure at my party, it was not because I believed it. It was because I needed to believe it. If you were a failure, then I was the success. Simple comparison. Clean scoreboard. But underneath? I was terrified of you, Mary. Your brain always worked faster than mine. Your ideas were always more original. Teachers liked you. Nana Rose adored you, and I could not figure out why I was the favorite when you were clearly more. So I made sure you stayed small. I interrupted you. I dismissed you. I made sure no one heard you so they would keep hearing me. Mom and Dad let me because it was easier than dealing with two daughters who both needed attention. She looked at me with something raw in her eyes. I built my whole identity on being better than you. And then Saturday happened, and I realized I was never better. I was just louder. I absorbed her words. 28 years of cruelty explained in a single confession. Fear. That was what had driven her. Fear of becoming me. Fear of being invisible. Fear of losing the only thing that made her feel special. It did not excuse what she had done, but it helped me understand it. Victoria asked me what I wanted now. What would it take for us to be something other than enemies? I told her the truth. I do not forgive you. Not yet. Maybe not ever. What you did, what our whole family did, is not something that gets fixed with one conversation. She nodded. I understand. But I am not going to carry the anger anymore either, I continued. Hating you takes too much energy. energy I would rather spend on my company, my life, my future. So where does that leave us? She asked. Honestly, I do not know. We are not going to be best friends. We might never be close. But I am willing to see if we can be civil. Eventually. Distant relatives who share DNA and not much else. She accepted that. It was more than she deserved, and she knew it. I told her the boundaries clearly. This is not me opening a door for you to walk back into my life whenever you want. This is me closing a chapter. Not burning the book. If you want any relationship with me, it starts from zero. You do not get credit for 28 years of sisterhood because there was none. We are strangers who happen to share parents. Victoria nodded. And if Mom and Dad try to use you to get to me, I added, this ends immediately. They have already tried, she admitted. Mom asked me to talk sense into you. And I told her no. For the first time in my life, I told her no. Something passed between us then. Not warmth, not forgiveness, but possibility. The faintest crack where light might eventually come through. She stood to leave and paused at the door. Thank you for seeing me today. For letting me speak. I touched Nana's pearls. Thank you for finally listening. The door closed behind Victoria, and I stood alone in my penthouse, staring at the space where my sister had just sat. The conversation had drained something from me, but it had also released something I had carried for too long. For the first time since the graduation party, I felt something close to peace. Not happiness. The wounds were too fresh for that. But something had loosened in my chest. I had said what needed saying. Victoria had heard it. Whatever came next, at least the silence between us was broken. I walked to the window and watched the city lights beginning to flicker on as dusk settled over Chicago. The quiet felt earned, sacred almost. Then my phone buzzed and the peace shattered. Mom. Of course. The moment could not last. I stared at the screen, debating whether to answer. A text from Victoria arrived at the same moment. Mom knows I was at your place. She has been calling me nonstop. I did not tell her anything about our conversation, but she is going to call you. Be ready. The warning came too late. My phone was already ringing again. I could ignore it. I could let my mother rage into voicemail until she exhausted herself. But I was done running from this confrontation. Better to face it now while the adrenaline from Victoria's visit still coursed through me. I answered without speaking, waiting for my mother to fill the silence first. Finally, she snapped. Do you have any idea what you have done? I said hello. She ignored me. Victoria told me she was at your apartment, that penthouse of yours. She was, I confirmed. She left. What happened? What did you say to her? She will not tell me anything. That is between me and Victoria. I am your mother, Eleanor insisted. I have a right to know what is going on in my own family. Do you? I asked. When is the last time you asked what was going on in my life before all this? Silence on the line. Then she tried a different approach. This hostility is not like you, Meredith. You were always the reasonable one. Reasonable, I repeated. Is that what you called it? I called it survival. I do not understand where this anger is coming from. That is exactly the problem, Mom. You have never understood. Because you never tried to. She fell back on her standard defense. We did everything we could for both of you. We treated you equally. Stop, I said. Just stop. We both know that is not true, and I am done pretending it is. Your father and I need to talk to you. Together. This has gone far enough. Fine, I told her. Put him on. I heard shuffling on the other end. My mother's voice muffled as she spoke to someone nearby. Then my father's measured tone replaced hers. Meredith. Let us discuss this calmly. I have been waiting 30 years for that conversation, I said. There is no need for dramatics. Dramatics? You mean like calling your daughter the biggest failure in the family at a public event? Victoria was out of line, he admitted. We have spoken to her. You have spoken to her. But have you listened to yourselves? He tried to make this about Victoria's behavior, about her poor judgment at the party, about the embarrassment she had caused, never about the 28 years of dismissal that had made her cruelty possible. "Your mother says you are claiming to run some company," he said. "Not claiming. Running. Nexus Financial. 9-figure valuation. Look it up. I do not understand why you would hide something like this. Because every time I tried to share something with this family, it was dismissed, ignored, made about Victoria. I stopped trying. That is not true. We have always supported both of you equally." I laughed bitterly. Equally. "Tell me, Dad, what was my major in college? Do you even remember I had one?" He paused too long. "That was years ago. You celebrated Victoria's acceptance to Georgetown for a week. My full ride got 15 seconds at breakfast before you changed the subject. You are being dramatic. I am being accurate." He shifted tactics then, trying to make this about family unity. Moving forward. "Whatever happened in the past, you are clearly doing well now. We should celebrate as a family." "Celebrate," I said. "You mean take credit? That is unfair, is it? Where was the celebration when Nana Rose left me the money to start this company? Where was the support when I was working 20-hour days building something from nothing?" "We did not know," he protested. "You did not ask. Not once in 5 years did you ask what I was actually doing with my life. You just assumed I was failing. We are your parents. We want to be part of your success. You wanted me to be invisible. You got your wish. Now you do not get to walk back in because the invisible girl turned out to be someone worth knowing." Then I deployed the truth I had been saving. "I know about Nana Rose's instructions." The silence on the other end was deafening. "What instructions?" my mother's voice cut in. She must have been listening the whole time. "Do not pretend you do not know. After Nana died, she left you a letter, asking you to support me, to stop comparing me to Victoria, to see me as an individual." My father's voice went cold. "Who told you that? Does it matter? What matters is that you read her dying wish for me and you ignored it, threw it away, called it meddling from the grave." My mother's voice was tight. "That is not how it was." "Then tell me how it was, Mom. Tell me why Nana Rose begged you to protect me and you chose not to." My father got angry then. His default when losing control. "Your grandmother always did favor you. She was the only person in this family who saw me," I interrupted. "And you hated her for it." "We did not hate her," my mother protested. "You hated that she loved me, because it meant admitting there was something worth loving that you had missed." "Now listen here," my father started. "No. You listen. For once in your life, you listen to me. And I let everything out. 28 years of silence breaking open in a flood of truth. You want to know why I hid my success? Because I knew exactly what would happen if you found out. You would do what you are doing right now, trying to rewrite history, claim credit, insert yourselves into something you had no part in building. Nana Rose gave me $50,000. That is how Nexus started. She believed in me when you could not be bothered to notice I existed. And now that I have built something without you, you want to pretend you were always proud? You did not know, because you did not care to know. I was invisible to you except when you needed someone to feel superior to, or someone to blame, or someone to make Victoria look good by comparison. I am done being your shadow daughter. I am done being the failure you needed me to be. And I am done pretending this family is something it never was. My father's control slipped completely. We gave you everything. You gave Victoria everything. You gave me absence. We love you, my mother cut in, tears in her voice now. We have always loved you. Love is not a word, Mom. It is a pattern, and your pattern was neglect. My father tried authority next. If you want to be part of this family. That is the thing, Dad. I am not sure I do. I gave them the ultimatum clearly. You do not get to call me and pretend the last 30 years did not happen. You do not get to claim my success. If you want a relationship with me, a real one, it starts with accountability. Not apologies, not excuses. Acknowledgement of what you did not do, and why it mattered. We are your parents, my father insisted. You had 30 years to be my parents. I do not owe you anything now. My mother started pleading. Family is important, Meredith. Then you should have treated me like family, I said. And I hung up. My hands shook as I set down the phone. Not from fear, from adrenaline. From finally speaking the truth I had swallowed my entire life. The cord was cut. I walked to my window and looked out at Chicago glittering below me, my city, my empire, my life. My phone buzzed. Victoria. I just got off the phone with Mom and Dad. They are furious. But they are also scared. I have never heard them scared before. Are you okay? I typed back slowly. I am better than okay. I am free. And I meant it. I walked to my desk and opened the drawer. The sealed envelope sat there, patient as always. Open when you no longer need their approval. I picked it up and turned it over in my hands. Tomorrow, I decided. Tomorrow I would finally open it. Tonight I just wanted to sit in a silence that was finally my own. Not because I had to be quiet, because I had nothing left unsaid. I woke knowing today was the day. Sunlight streamed through my penthouse windows, painting everything in shades of gold. 1 week had passed since I hung up on my parents. The quietest week of my life. No family calls, no demands, no voicemails filled with accusations or guilt. Victoria had texted twice, short, respectful messages giving me space. My parents had not reached out at all. Work continued normally. The Hartwell partnership progressed with its new team, and through it all I slept better than I had in years. Now I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of what I was about to do. The sealed envelope had waited long enough. Open when you no longer need their approval. For 2 years I had carried Nana Rose's final gift without opening it. Through building Nexus, through the graduation party, through confrontations and revelations and finally finding my voice. She had known somehow that I would need time, that the words inside would not mean anything until I had earned them, until I had become someone who did not need permission to be seen. I was ready now. I made coffee and sat in my favorite chair by the window. Nana's pearls hung around my neck like armor and blessing combined. The envelope felt heavier than paper should. Something else was inside, not just a letter. A small hard shape pressed against my fingers through the aged paper. I turned it over in my hands, studying Nana's shaky handwriting one more time. For Meredith. Open when you no longer need their approval. 2 years of wondering what she had left me. 2 years of carrying this sealed mystery through every triumph and heartbreak. I slid my finger under the flap and broke the seal. Inside, I found a folded letter and something wrapped in tissue. I unwrapped the tissue first, my breath catching when I saw what it held. A ring. Nana Rose's engagement ring. Simple gold band with a small diamond that caught the morning light. She had worn this every single day of her married life until the day she died. I had assumed it was buried with her. I had never imagined she would leave it to me. I slid it onto my finger, and it fit perfectly. Of course it did. Nana always knew things before anyone else. Then I unfolded the letter. Her handwriting was shakier than the other letters she had written me. This one came from closer to the end, dated 3 weeks before she passed. My dearest Meredith, if you are reading this, you have done it. You have stopped waiting for them to see you and started seeing yourself. I am so proud of you. Not for what you have built, but for who you have become. I am giving you my ring. Your grandfather gave it to me 62 years ago, when everyone told him he was marrying beneath his station. I was a seamstress's daughter. He was a Caldwell. His family said I would never amount to anything. Sound familiar? He married me anyway, and we built a life that had nothing to do with their approval. This ring is not valuable in the way the world measures value, but it is priceless in what it represents. Choosing love over fear, choosing yourself over their expectations, choosing to build something real even when no one believes you can. Tears streamed down my face, but I kept reading. There was more. Another page folded behind the first. I need to tell you something I never said while I was alive, because I did not want to poison your relationship with your parents. But if you are reading this, that relationship has already been tested. So here is the truth. I saw what they did to you. The comparison, the dismissal, the way they made you small so Victoria could feel big. I confronted Eleanor once, years ago, when you were about 16. Do you remember the summer you stopped smiling? I told her she was losing you. That she was so focused on Victoria's brightness that she could not see you burning. She told me I was being dramatic, that you were fine on your own. That was when I knew I had to save my energy for you directly. I could not change them. But I could make sure you knew, really knew, that someone saw you. The money I left you was not charity, it was investment. I had been watching you since you were small, the way your mind worked, the way you noticed things others missed, the way you never stopped trying even when no one was paying attention. I knew you would build something. I just wanted to give you the seed. Whatever you have built, whatever you have become, that is you, Meredith. Not me, not my money, not anyone else, you. Do not let anyone take credit for what you earned alone. I pressed the letter to my chest and let myself cry. She had noticed the summer I stopped smiling. She had confronted my mother. She had fought for me in ways I never knew. I was not invisible. I just could not see who was watching. The final page waited. I wiped my eyes and kept reading. One more thing, my darling girl. Forgiveness is not a requirement. I know the world tells you to forgive. That holding on to anger poisons only yourself. But I have lived 91 years, and I have learned this. Forgiveness is a gift you give when you are ready. If you are never ready, that is okay too. What matters is not forgiving them. What matters is freeing yourself. You can let go of the anger without letting go of the truth. You can choose peace without choosing reconciliation. You can love yourself enough to stop carrying their weight, not because they deserve your freedom, but because you do. I do not know what your family looks like now as you read this. Maybe things have changed. Maybe they have not. Either way, promise me this. Choose yourself. Every time, every day, no matter what. You are enough. You have always been enough. The only person who ever needed to see that was you. All my love, across all distances. Nana Rose, P.S. Wear the ring when you need reminding. I will be with you always. I sat in silence for a long time after finishing. The ring felt warm on my finger. Something had fundamentally shifted inside me. You can let go of the anger without letting go of the truth. You can choose peace without choosing reconciliation. That was the answer I had been searching for. I did not have to forgive my parents to be free of them. I did not have to hate Victoria to protect myself. I could hold the truth of what happened and still put it down. Not for them. For me. I knew suddenly that I needed to visit Nana's grave. I needed to say thank you in person. I needed to show her the ring on my finger and tell her that I finally understood. Graceland Cemetery was quiet on a Sunday morning. I walked along familiar paths until I reached the headstone I was looking for. Rose Eleanor Caldwell, beloved wife, mother, grandmother. I knelt on the grass and touched the cold stone. Fresh flowers sat in a vase beside it. Someone else had been here recently. I spoke out loud, not caring who might hear. I read your letter, Nana, both of them. I understand now. You knew I was not ready. You knew I needed to fight my own battles before I could hear what you had to say. So you waited. I built something, Nana, something real. And I stopped hiding it. I told Victoria the truth. I told Mom and Dad the truth. I stopped pretending to be smaller than I am. I do not know if they will ever change. Victoria might. Mom and Dad probably will not. But it does not matter anymore. I am not waiting for them to see me. I see myself now. Finally. Thank you for everything. I will wear this ring every day. I promise. I sat with her for a while, letting grief and gratitude settle into something quiet. When I finally stood to leave, I looked more closely at the fresh flowers. A small card was tucked among the stems. For Mom Rose. We miss you every day. Victoria. My sister visited Nana's grave. Another small sign of change I had not expected. I drove home through streets I knew by heart now. Chicago felt different. I felt different. Not fixed. Healing was never that simple, but lighter, clearer, freer. I texted Victoria when I got home. I saw your flowers at Nana's grave. She responded quickly. You were there too? She helped me understand some things today. Me too, Victoria wrote back. Every time I visit, not reconciliation, but something. Maybe that was where it started. My phone buzzed again. Daniel, board meeting tomorrow. You ready to officially step into the spotlight? I smiled, touching Nana's ring. I have been ready, I typed back. I just did not know it until now. Tomorrow I would announce myself to the world. Not as the hidden CEO or the dropout sister or the biggest failure in the family. Just as Mary, the woman who built something, the woman who found her voice, the woman who chose herself. Nana would be proud. I was proud. That was the whole point, was it not? After 30 years of waiting for someone else to be proud of me, I had finally become proud of myself. And that was enough. That was everything. 3 months had passed since I opened Nana Rose's letter. 3 months since I chose peace over revenge, myself over their approval, freedom over the cage I had built around my own heart. Now I sat in my corner office on the 40th floor of Nexus Tower, watching Chicago sparkle in the morning light, and marveled at how different everything felt. I was no longer the hidden CEO, no longer the secret success story. A Forbes profile had run last month with the headline, "The CEO Who Built an Empire in Silence." Industry conferences invited me to speak. Journalists requested interviews. The world finally knew my name. But the recognition was not what healed me. It was the not needing it anymore that set me free. Nana's ring glinted on my finger as I reached for my coffee. Her pearls waited in their box for special occasions. Both letters hung framed on the wall behind my desk, reminders of who believed in me before I believed in myself. James knocked and entered with news. The Hartwell Partnership paperwork is ready for final signatures. Margaret Hartwell will be here within the hour. I nodded and smiled. The deal that had almost never happened was finally closing, with a completely new team. Victoria's name nowhere in the documents. But somehow that fact no longer brought me satisfaction, just peace. Margaret arrived at 10 sharp, elegant as always in a charcoal suit and pearl necklace. We signed the papers in my conference room with Daniel and her senior associates as witnesses. Handshakes exchanged, champagne poured, a partnership built on mutual respect rather than family drama. After her team filed out, Margaret lingered. She had one more thing to tell me. Victoria completed her probationary period, she said. She is back on regular status. Different department, different focus. But she is still with us. I told her I was genuinely glad. She studied my face and seemed to believe me. That is what makes you remarkable, she said. Most people in your position would have wanted her destroyed. You wanted her to grow. That takes more strength than revenge ever could. Before she left, Margaret mentioned something else. Victoria asked me to tell you something if I saw you. She said to tell you she is still visiting Nana. Every Sunday. A small bridge, still being built. I took a rare afternoon break that day, walking through Millennium Park to clear my head. Spring sunshine warmed the city. Tourists photographed the bean. Children chased each other across the grass. And there, sitting alone on a bench, I spotted a familiar figure, Victoria. She wore professional clothes, but softer somehow. Not the armor she used to carry. She stared at the bean's curved surface without really seeing it, lost in thought. I could have walked away. Could have avoided the encounter entirely. Instead, I walked toward her, not for reconciliation, just for presence. She looked up when my shadow fell across the bench. Surprise flickered across her face, then something softer. "This seat taken?" I asked. She shook her head. "Please." We sat in silence for a moment, watching tourists take selfies in front of the giant silver sculpture. "Margaret told you," Victoria finally said. "About the Sundays." She did. "I started going after our talk at your apartment. I realized I never really knew Nana. I was always too busy being the golden child to actually listen to her." "She would have liked that," I told her. "You visiting." Victoria nodded slowly. "I tell her about you, about what you have built. I think she already knew, but I tell her anyway." The conversation continued, easier than I expected. Victoria told me about the professional conduct training, about the humiliation of being taught basic decency by people half her age. But more importantly, she told me about therapy, about finally examining why she needed to tear me down to feel okay about herself, about the terror that had driven her cruelty all those years. "I was afraid of becoming you," she admitted, "invisible, overlooked. So I made sure you stayed small. And the whole time, you were building something I could not even imagine." "I was not building against you," I told her. "I was building for me. I know. That is what makes it worse. You were not even thinking about me. And I spent my whole life thinking about you." She asked if we could ever be something. Not what we were. That was gone. But something new. I told her the truth. Maybe, not sisters the way movies show it, but maybe something real, eventually. She accepted that. Maybe was more than she deserved and she knew it. Her phone buzzed and she glanced at it with a sigh. "Mom," she said. "Again, she wants me to convince you to come to Easter dinner." And, I asked. I told her no. Again. Something had genuinely changed. Victoria was no longer their messenger, their weapon, their golden child willing to do anything for approval. She was becoming someone else. Someone I might eventually want to know. We parted ways at the edge of the park. Not with a hug. We were not there yet. But with a real handshake and eye contact held. "I am going to keep trying," Victoria said. "To be someone you do not have to protect yourself from." "I know," I told her. "I see it. Does that mean anything? It means I am watching. And I am not walking away yet." That evening, I stood at my penthouse window watching the city lights come alive. Nana's ring caught the glow. Her letters hung on my wall. The life I had built spread out before me in every direction. 3 months ago, I had stood in a ballroom and heard my sister call me the biggest failure in the family. Tonight I stood in my penthouse looking down at the empire I had created, and I realized something simple but profound. She was wrong. They were all wrong. But that was not the victory. The victory was that I stopped needing them to be right. I stopped waiting for them to see what I had become. I stopped measuring my worth by whether they noticed. I built something. Not to prove them wrong, though I did. Not to earn their approval, though I never got it. I built something because I believed I could. Because Nana Rose believed I could. Because somewhere deep inside, beneath all the dismissals and comparisons and cruelties, I knew I was worth believing in. Victoria is trying. Maybe she will get there, maybe she will not. Either way, I will be okay. My parents may never change, may never apologize, may never see me as anything other than the daughter who embarrassed them by succeeding. That is their loss, not mine, not anymore. If you are watching this, if you have stayed with me through every humiliation, every silence, every moment of finally finding my voice, I want you to know something. This is not just my story. It is yours too. Maybe you are the one who always gets overlooked at family gatherings. Maybe you are the one who gave everything to people who never said thank you. Maybe you are the one who has been called a failure so many times you started to believe it. I see you, the way Nana Rose saw me. You do not owe anyone your silence. You do not owe anyone a smaller version of yourself. You do not owe anyone forgiveness you are not ready to give. And you do not have to wait for them to see your worth to know that you have it. Setting boundaries is not cruel. Walking away is not failure. Choosing yourself is not selfish. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stop waiting for people who were never going to show up and show up for yourself instead. I did. After 30 years of being invisible, I finally saw myself, and everything changed. If my story meant something to you, if you felt seen or heard or understood, I hope you will stick around. There are more stories like this one, more women who found their voices, more families who tried to silence someone who refused to stay quiet. Hit that subscribe button so you do not miss what comes next. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And leave a comment telling me your story, because I promise you, someone else out there needs to hear yours too. You are not invisible. You are not a failure. You are not what they called you. You are enough. You have always been enough. And anyone who cannot see that, that is their loss, not yours. Never again yours. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for believing in this story and in yourself. Until next time. This story is fictionalized for dramatic effect.